Now, is there a benefit to breathing through your nose during the recovery phase of an exercise? For instance, I started sprinting
Yep.
and I would do 100-meter sprints. And I got one of these devices called a turbine. I'm sure you've seen that, like a nasal dilator.
Yeah. I've used them. I've used all that shit.
Yep. Yeah, because my nose isn't super big, right? My nostrils aren't super big. And I'll actually get a Venturi effect when I'm breathing heavily through my nose, that if I go and inhale, my nose collapses, right? Because I don't have a big nose, which is probably my genetics. But the cool thing about this nasal dilator is it kind of opens up the distal nostrils, and I'm actually I'm much more able to breathe heavily through my nose without the nasal passages collapsing. And so when I'm sprinting, I'll sprint and I can nasal breathe in the sprint. But as soon as I get done with that 100 meters, if I don't have a nasal dilator, or I'll walk down the track, people must think I'm stupid or crazy. And I'm literally holding my nose open. I'm trying to nasal breathe to recover. Is there a benefit to that? Like keeping the breathing as a nasal? I imagine there is, as I'm recovering from a 100-meter sprint.
Yes. So it depends on what you're trying to do. So yes, there are times when you can manipulate breathing post recovery to elicit a response that may not have you recover as quickly. Right. So meaning I go sprint and I immediately go into nasal breathing after I sprinted. That is going to suck. But that buildup of all of that anaerobic activity, post anaerobic activity, especially the carbon dioxide, is going to stress the cells more. Right. So I'm teaching the cell. Now, this can have, you have to be careful with this stuff, because this can have a, like you can go too far sometimes. But I would be maybe instituting something like that a couple, maybe 1 or 2 times a week, not more than, a half dozen to, like maybe 10 times. But the turbinates and things that are opening the nostrils up, those can be very dangerous. All right. Because we're not used to moving that much air through the nasal passages. I've blown out the turbinates. I've gotten bloody noses from these things because I'm working so hard and I'm moving so much air that it's literally burning through things. Right. What part of the process, and we offer one of these programs, it's like a nasal breathing development program, is where we start working on expanding the nostrils. Like there's a lot of yogic work and Ayurvedic work around this stuff where you're working with expanding the nostrils. I am able to, at this point, open my nostrils. So I have a highly deviated septum, right? Like it's crooked as hell. But the moment I start exercising, I'm able to do this. And I open everything up because it's taken time, but I've been able to open that stuff up. Or air in that front lip, right? So we start to learn to manipulate things in a way that allows for us to still use the nasal breathing. But there is a point in a time when I'm doing roughly, like I can do 3-minute efforts. I can do 30-second efforts, and I don't need to mouth breathe at all in 30-second efforts. After those 30 seconds efforts, after about 4 of them, I then need to start mouth breathing, because metabolically the cost is getting so heavy. I have to offload. But we have patterns of things we've created, like a 5-7-9, where we go 5 breaths at gear 5, 7 at gear 4, and then drop down into 3-2-1. You've got nose only for 9 breaths. And then you can repeat that pattern to help shift down into a better or more recovered state.
I love this. I never even thought about that. But as you were showing this, if you guys aren't watching on YouTube, you might want to watch this part on YouTube. Brian was changing the way that his face was. He was like making a funny face, like, and then breathing to hold the nostrils open, and then pushing out the top lip. I'm not sure what. Yeah.
I could be a monkey.
But it works. It's like you can buttress the nose by changing the structure of your face and preventing the nasal passages from collapsing. As you are breathing quickly. So when we're talking about the thing I mentioned is called a turbine. It's actually a brace. It's a plastic piece, and it's not very pleasant to wear. I'll mention that to people. But then you mentioned the turbinates, which are structures that many of us are not aware of. They're sort of outpouchings of nasal tissue within your nasal passages. So if you look online,
greatest filter system ever fucking invented, man.
Yeah. So the turbinates are outpouchings of tissue within your sinuses, within your nasal passages that are inside your nose. Like if you go to pick your nose and you stuck your finger way up, you might touch a turbinate. But you don't want to do that. That's what Brian's talking about when he says his turbinates can bleed or turbinates can be exposed to too much oxygen. So I love that idea of kind of using your own face to like keep the nasal passages open.